Good afternoon and welcome to Light on the Hill. I am Pastor John. Our topic for this week is going to be I know it says I am the Good Shepherd, and that is our topic, but we're actually going to be talking about two of the I am statements that we have been talking about the past couple of weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and go right into our Bible verse so that we can get right on that, which is John 10:9 through 15. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life, and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand, and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming, and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. So, with these two I am statements, they're actually both interlinked, which is why I put them together underneath the topic for this week of I am the good shepherd. Because both of them have to do specifically with shepherding. So a little bit of kind of background information on what Jesus is pulling here for the imagery in these statements. In his time, a shepherd within a village out in the countryside, the way that that job would work is typically you'd have either somebody you'd hired or one of the children of one of the families within the village playing that role. And when they would go to gather the sheep to take them out into the fields to eat, they would go from courtyard to courtyard, and whoever was kind of on watch or the doorman there would recognize them and let them in. And so when they would go in, they could then call the sheep, and the sheep would also recognize them because they're who they would go with every single week or every single kind of time they would go out, and they wanted go out and get fed. And so they would recognize their voice and come to them and be let out. And the shepherd would then lead them out into the field, they'd graze, so on and so forth, and if they had to stay out in that field overnight, they would have a separate sort of pen, which had walls around it and a gate as well, which was meant to keep out, wild animals, and they'd stay in there. And the shepherd would then sleep actually at the doorway to make sure that A, nobody would climb in and try to steal the sheep, and B, if any wild animals gets in, the shepherd could then kind of deal with them. Okay, so that is the imagery that Jesus is pulling from, is this sort of practice of this village shepherd going from place to place, bringing the sheep out to pasture, and then, bringing them back, and that sort of relationship. Now, deeper within this, what Jesus is specifically referring to here is when he says that he is the good shepherd, he is specifically contrasting himself with the Pharisees, who he's describing as sort of being, the thieves. The idea here is that the sheep are all of us, or the people who are listening to Jesus at that time. And they were responding to Jesus' teachings and his voice more so than necessarily they were with the Pharisees. And so what Jesus is kind of firing back at his critics here is saying, you guys are getting upset because these people are all listening to me and gathering around me because they recognize that I am the shepherd, I'm here to guide them, whereas with you guys, you're not really there to actually guide them, you're really more in it for, yourselves. So this entire sort of segment is Jesus being very critical towards the Pharisees while also painting a picture of his relationship with in his followers as well as anybody who sort of listens to his teaching. So what does that mean for us? Well, it hasn't changed that much from that time, though I think we can all understand that there are not as many groups that are specifically like the Pharisees necessarily within our lives. Hopefully not. But with us, similar to the listeners back then, Jesus is our good shepherd, and when we hear his voice, we are drawn towards him, and by obeying him, we are then able to, obeying his teachings and commandments, we are able to come into a better sort of relationship with him. And so similar to how the door lets us go in and out to graze, Jesus lets us go in and out to meet with his Father and become in a relationship with God. So that is what I have for you all this week. I'll go ahead and close this in prayer, and I will see you next week for the last part of this series that we are doing. Dear Lord Jesus, I thank you so much for this time that we can come together and learn more about your word. I thank you for all the blessings you've given us this past week, for all the good things you have done in our lives. I lift up all the issues that we are facing within our country today. I pray that you will continue to keep us safe from the coronavirus, and that you will also help and guide our health service officials as they are guiding us through this pandemic, that you will protect them as well and give them wisdom on how to best guide us through all of this. I continue to pray, God, for the racial unrest that exists within our country. I just pray that you will help us to find healing with all of this, as well as correct the things within our society that need to change to prevent situations like this from continuing to happen. I pray all these things in your name. Amen.